OHDSI Phenotype Library. We have had several conversations on this topic. I just wanted to kick off the conversation. The leads, I believe that one of the core contributors are Christian and Asia. And I noticed Asia is unable to join, but you're one of the leads of the DARWIN Phenotype Project, and I know obviously Danny and Peter are the executive sponsors of the DARWIN Phenotyping Project, and there's a lot of work. So wanted to talk about ideas of bringing together the contributions of the phenotypes of the DARWIN work to the OHDSI Phenotype Library, how we could facilitate that, what needs to be done, and so on. And there's several reasons to do that, but I just wanted to hear from you all about it.
So, Gautam, we don't have the DARWIN people here, right? Except me, if you want to count that way. No, don't see anybody. Okay.
Yeah. Well, hi. Well, I'm Miguel Angel from Barcelona. I'm data partner participating in DARWIN.
Yes. But Danny has like a group of people who worked on the SOP. You're probably aware, Miguel.
No, this is my point, that because we would like to be involved in this initiative. So for the reason we are today here, Angela and I and myself, because we would like to be involved in this project, because as a data partners, we are very interested in collaborating and in participating in this very, very important and interesting initiative in the OHDSI, obviously, but also in this case related to DARWIN. So please, we are very interested in being involved in this initiative.
Okay.
So, Christian, I talked to Danny and Ikpi, and I also pinged him yesterday, but I didn't hear back yet. But he did. Yeah, we can't have the discussion without having the people who are working within DARWIN on that. They have a process that they actually submitted to the OHDSI Symposium an abstract on that is slightly different, or not different, but additional. And then they have a paper that they're working on now in the revision that is also talking about, So we need definitely to have these people on these thoughts.
So, okay, so look, we have two choices. One is we adjourn, and you guys actually invite those people. The other one is I tell you what I know. And since we only have half an hour here, that would jumpstart that conversation. That's you would have to make that decision.
I think we should. You tell us what you know. That's how I feel. We have 30 minutes. We have a lot of people join. I think we have to start the conversation, maybe.
Yeah. So, Christian, I mean, we know of obviously Danny Alhambra, but who are the key people or the core group that should be part of this conversation?
It's Albert and Anike and Asia, of course. So there are two activities. So the overall idea is DARWIN, the EMA wants to do a gazillion studies, and there's no way we can create phenotypes the way we do it now, which is very labor intensive and time intensive. Just because, if you're doing 140 studies per year, then you can't do, and then each of them has 4 phenotypes. Then we're talking half a grand phenotypes, and if we do the process that, for example, you guys came up with, then that'll take probably 20 years. So that's the problem space. Problem space is something needs to happen in order to formalize and streamline this work. The good news is, of course, the vast majority of these EMA studies aren't PLEs. they're just drug utilization study. You know, who uses what drug in what country, why, for what indication, that type of thing. How often? What are these patients like? So we are not looking for the high end of complexity and complication. It's more like simple outcomes, simple exposures, that type of thing. So that's the good news. But the bad news is you need to not only create the phenotype, but what, of course, the peer review is in your world is the review by the agency. And so the agency doesn't want to, they can't be sped up more than sending nice emails. So that's the problem. Also, of course, partially, we don't even know where all these the requests are coming from. And the way that Darwin is set up is that the requests are coming from the EMA Central in Amsterdam, but also the competent authorities, as they call the little agencies in each country, also will be able to use the system, because otherwise you don't even have sufficient amount of questions to ask to create that large number of studies. And so these are people we not even used to work with. So there's no common ground. So clearly, if you start from scratch explaining everything, that an outcome is also a cohort and that type of thing, then good luck. So the idea is here and there's a whole slew of negotiations going on with the agencies of how to standardize and streamline activities in Darwin. So phenotyping is one. There are others as well, which need to be done in a pre-canned, pre-specified, efficient way. Okay, so that's the background.
Okay.
Yep.
So the purpose of this effort, the purpose of this group is to ensure the cohort definitions that have been developed and evaluated by Darwin to be, if they would like to submit it to the OHDSI Phenotype Library, create a pipeline for it. And that pipeline should be full and easy.
I'm just talking about Darwin right now. I haven't talked about how that works with this one. As far as Darwin is concerned, they don't even know that you have the Phenotype Library, okay, the institution, the EMA, or even worse, the other smaller ones, agencies. So for them to submit anything to a Phenotype Library that exists somewhere in the world is not something that is on their mind right now. Go ahead. Okay. So right now, this is where we are. So what they started doing is building an SOP. And the SOP, I have a version 0.1. I'm sure there's a version 0.2 now, or whatever they've submitted. I'm not actually following it too tightly, but it doesn't matter. I'm just talking principles right now. The version 1, let me share the screen. 0.1, I mean, share screen. Screen, see. Here we go. Bigger. So the way that this works right now is, of course, so there are two aspects. One aspect is the sheer mechanics, okay, and so there is a SOP which describes the steps, who has to do what, and how it's gonna, and what the responsibilities are. This is the diagram. And so, the phenotype proposal, essentially they're saying, give me all ranitidine patients or all inhalant corticosteroid patients, that type of thing. And then you go through here, right? This is a process after which either the phenotype is going to be rejected, saying, no, we can't do that, or it's infeasible. We don't have data like that at all. We don't have genomic data. Or there's another reason why the phenotype failed, or you got a phenotype. and then it goes into the study. So this is the diagram, and then there's a whole text explaining who's gonna do what and how the process is going to work. And then at the same time, we had a conversation about how you actually build a phenotype. And there are, as we know, we've discussed it already before, there are two approaches. One approach is you build it in a systematic way, which means every step that you take, you know how you take them and why you take them. So you know whether or not you need an end date and whether or not the index date has to be fine-tuned or not, and things like this. So, and the other one is you characterize. So you create a definition and then you take a look and see what it looks like, which is, the whole cohort diagnostics and so on idea, evaluator. So these two things exist, and they exist in parallel, and they exist independent of what you're looking here right now, what the overall process is. Okay, so what we need to do as a community, which wants to do this right, systematic, and wants to help the Darwin, is to bring it together. And that hasn't happened yet. And we need to do this. So this could be the beginning of that process. That there is so first of all, help defining an efficient process. And then the second one is, once you have that process, the actual work of building a phenotype, or, by the way, evaluating an existing phenotype from the library. It's not that different from building a new one. That we need to proceduralize as well and agree on. And then they have to send it to Darwin and saying, hey, this is what we want to do. Are you fine? Are you happy with that? And so we can have these conversations. Definitely, we should have these conversations at the symposium. I don't know whether any of that is planned or in the mix. Is it, Gautam or Asa?
I have not seen this.
No, I mean, because for the last maybe 7 months, nobody had the conversation together. So the work on the phenotype working group has not included anything going on in Darwin. Nobody brought the talk. Nobody showed up on the formal meeting. So our plan for the phenotyping working group on the symposium was to actually support how often, which is the big activity happening in the symposium. So our workshop was all about making sure all these phenotypes are correct, cleaning them up before they go to how often the next day.
Okay.
And that was the work activity. But I agree that we have to have that the symposium might be a good place. And yeah, that's what I also mentioned. That's what Danny and I slightly touched on last week.
I mean, we may not need an official activity. We can just do it offline and just sit down and say, okay, guys, how do we do that? But I think we at some point, I think we're at the state where this is mature enough on all initiatives to come together and say, okay, guys, what do we do? Okay, I think that that would be a good thing to do on the symposium, because everybody's going to be there, and plus there's a poster and all that kind of stuff going on as well. There's a little bit of insecurity from the Darwin team towards OHDSI sometimes, saying, yeah, they have all these grand ideas, but we need to get something done now, and we have to submit this, and it has to be done by this date, and Jesus Christ, and we can't have all these fundamental philosophical discussions all the time. So we probably need to figure out how we can bridge that gap a little bit to make it more warm, fuzzy, and easier to engage. I think it's not just the phenotype, it's general, it's also the methods, everything, right? So these guys need to come up with the machinery, and they are under timelines which the OHDSI community at large is not.
are you familiar with the number of cohort definitions that may have been developed by Darwin for any projects?
Yeah. So this year there are, if I correctly remember, 8 studies, and each of them, has half a dozen cohorts as usual. So you can multiply, so roughly 50 or so cohorts that have been pulled out. And some of them are trivial. Okay, give me all patients who have a name of a drug ingredient, but others are not so trivial. The outcomes and the patient population and stuff is not so trivial. So definitely, some of them I was involved in. They called me and said, "Hey, can you help? We need some help." And then it's the usual stuff, infectious diseases and asthma and whatever. So there is definitely activity going on, and both sides need to step forward and engage. And it would be good on the symposium to facilitate that and make that happen. Usually, then people are in the right mood and in the mindset is the whole can-do attitude that you get there will help that. So that would be a good thing. So apart from this one, there's the one that ASE started with these guys. And I don't know whether or not it made it formally into the SOP or not. So the question was, the way we do that internally may not have to do anything with the SOP that goes on between Darwin and EMA. So that could well be that this is taken out and not part of the SOP. Same is true for the cohort diagnostics and all that stuff. And again, there needs to, for the cohort diagnostics and the evaluation and so on, they have needs, for example, about speed and performance that you guys may not worry about. So this conversation needs to be initiated. What the RCA thing did is to essentially say, why are we doing these complicated cohorts? There must be a reason, and there must be a reason why there are so many of them, even though they're not that. So for each of the diseases, there are like a gazillion different definitions floating around, and the library is supposed to address that to a certain degree, except there is no mechanism to ask the question, okay, why is this different? Okay, why did you pick it? Why did you do it this way? Other than the generic idea of, well, the clinical description tells me that a stroke is a hospitalized patient, so I think I should expect them to be in the hospital. There's no why certain choices are made. And so that's what she started working on. We started working on. It's actually a whole group, and with the review cycle earlier this year. And I don't know whether you've seen it, but there is also a SOP-like step-by-step document. And what that document does is, pull it out maybe, essentially says, look, it depends on the disease and it depends on the purpose. Purpose shouldn't be a study, an explicit study, but a generic purpose. Like, is it an indication that you need, or is it an outcome that you need, or is it a patient population for general setting that you need, or is it an exclusion criterion that you need? So for the various different things that you need, that will have an effect on what you do and what you don't do in these cohort definitions. There's a little bit of a debate, because there are people, some of them in the room, who are saying, you know what? If I have the perfect definition, it should serve all different purposes. Don't give me this whole purpose thing. A definition of a patient population shouldn't depend on the purpose. These patients either have the disease or they don't have the disease. It's true, except we don't have the data. If we had the data, we wouldn't have to do phenotype development at all. We would just go to condition occurrence and pull out all the patients with the right condition. Doesn't work that way. We know that the patients, that the records don't give that to us. So we start doing all these gymnastics to get other data to specify the patient population. And that inevitably is for a purpose. So if you're saying, I can't get the perfect one, but I can get a good one, then clearly you have to optimize for a purpose. And then, of course, you have to optimize for the type of disease. An asthma attack is a very acute, short thing. It doesn't last very long. After a day, it's over. And diabetes is lifelong, most of the time. And everything else is in between. And so what you do in order to optimize depends on the nature of the disease.
Yeah.
So again, this is not an invention of us. This is just what happens. It's the truth. That's why these core definitions differ, because everybody comes up with different mechanisms to optimize what they think they need to optimize. Unfortunately, that's not made explicit. It's an implicit. Here is a good the definition. And
Christian,
so that
other people have their hands up. I don't know if you want to pause for a second.
I can't see that. So yes,
give
go ahead.
people a
I stop.
Yeah. But as a let's see who's got their hands raised. I can't see. But before you say that, I heard 4 main ideas from Christian that I want to make sure we capture. There are 50 core definitions that Darwin has worked on approximately. Some of them are simple, some of them are complex. There is a SOP that was showed. There's some documentation involved with that SOP about the performance of those core definitions. And then there is a challenge of multiple flavors or multiple different variants of this clinical idea being modeled differently. And we're not, and then how do we disentangle them? And one idea that ASIA is working on is the purpose. Okay, who's got what order? I can't see.
And Andrew, it's me and Andrew. Andrew, go ahead.
I just wanted to mostly ask you, Aza and Gautam, about how urgent is it to get the N3C phenotypes out and into the library? We started that conversation a while ago, and I've been trying to push it, and there's hundreds of them, and they've been clinically validated. They have the purpose associated with them. They don't have the annotations that you described, Christian, which I'm highly in favor of, that kind of give the rationale for particular choices, which I think is a key thing, and I'm glad that's being worked on. But there's a bolus of them that are available there. My guess is there's a bolus available from some of the other large OMOP using communities, and it would be nice to have just like a process here. If you've got Atlas compatible JSON definitions for phenotypes and some metadata about how they were developed, then here's how you do it. And I know there's a broad sense of it, but I've been trying to help you guys push that forward, and it's been months. So I'm just, it seems like an urgent thing to do, but on the other hand, I'm kind of feeling this inertia on some sides. So
yeah, no, I'll try to at least start before going to ask this question. So has equal priority as Darwin. It's another contributing organization, and we have had several conversations with N3C. The distinction, that's my perception, and I've got validation from N3C team members, is the OHDSI Phenotype Library is a repository of cohort definitions. N3C has a repository of concept set expressions and concept sets. So they are 2 distinct ideas. They are not cohort definitions that differentiated leads to a cohort. It is components that can be used as building blocks for a cohort definition. And with that distinction, it makes it a different contribution. So I've been thinking about how to integrate N3C's contribution to the OHDSI library. I'm struggling to call it a phenotype library, but it is a concept set repository. So that's the distinction that I wanted to call out. And there is that we need to talk about it a little bit more about it, try to figure it.
My guess is, Gautam, and I don't know how others feel, but I think the way OHDSI began early on to say this is a computable cohort definition that includes all inclusion/exclusion criteria and a start and end date is so highly misleading that it's just not helpful at all. I think really what we're talking about is the concepts you need to define a disease state. We don't need the fact that you've never been on this kind of a treatment and that it started on this date and you exit as of this date. That is not really a part of anything other than the study design. We've managed to make a computable version, but it confuses the heck out of everybody. And it is leading to conversations like this, like where all of that clinical validation has gone in and they are phenotype definitions and we're not calling them because they don't have all of the other things you need for this study that says you're treatment naive for this class of drugs and you have a look back period of 365, all those things that go into a cohort definition that have nothing to do with anybody's view of a phenotype are called a phenotype definition in our library, which is not helpful. And I think that needs to be resolved. I think the nomenclature around it needs to be resolved. And personally.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. I think that's a conversation that we have to, as a community, have to have. The framework of the library as of right now, the phenotype library as of right now, finds it struggles to accept something that's not a cohort definition. So we want to work with N3C to integrate it. We have conversations on the forum. We have had conversations before. In the upcoming conversation that I think Kyle has set up the next week or so, let's detail this and try to figure out how to bring it. From an intent perspective, absolutely on board of integrating N3C's contribution to the OHDSI's publicly visible repository.
Okay.
Asa, you have your hands raised, Andre?
Yeah. So it's one of the challenges with phenotyping is every time we try to solve a problem, we go back to fundamental discussions that there are opinions and there's no one perfect answer, and that sometimes seems to hinder us from moving forward. But yeah, I think the NC3 thing, we just need to follow up. It's just that the follow-up is not easy given that there's many team members and it's not a perfect solution. It's to be adjusted, either create cohorts around those concept sets or tweak the library to take concept sets as a submission. So one of the two, we're still trying to figure out the easiest way to answer Andrew's question. Like, it's just that we need to figure one of the two, because the current process of the submission doesn't work for them because they're concept sets. But we absolutely need to find one of the two solutions, either turn them into cohorts or have a process for concept sets. But going back to Darwin and Christian information that he provided and the background, I think, Christian, it is one thing we have to decide on. Maybe that's true for everything with Darwin and OHDSI, but particularly my interest is the phenotyping. There has to be a sweet spot where we agree on the principle, but there are some processes that will be specific to Darwin, given the time frame and the time commitment, which is different than building the science inside the community, which can take its time, subject to discussions and debates and forward. So I understand that there might be a specific process or way of doing things for phenotyping that Darwin might want to follow. That is maybe not the whole community want to adapt because they're still discussing the science, but there should be a sweet spot where we should agree on the principles, similar to what we think of causal inferences, similar to the way we think of standardization and vocabularies and data. So we don't have to have the same exact same thing. This is OHDSI process for phenotyping that everybody should adhere to, and Darwin takes it. We just need to find that sweet spot where we agree on the principles, agree on the way generally to do things, and then Darwin, just like we in J&J might follow a certain thing that is not that others don't follow, that's still fine. But we all agree on standardization, we all agree on diagnostics, we all agree on main principles of our science. So that's one thing. The other thing I think which you did not touch, which relative to Darwin, I think it's not only the process of phenotyping that is currently in the cooks and we need to have some more alignment, it's also the output and the idea of the library. I personally got slightly confused that if we end up with a Darwin library that has content that OHDSI library doesn't have, it's a loss. Because if we're building cohorts and we're using the resource of the community to evaluate or validate or following the same ideas and principles, we do want those artifacts to be shared by the community, and we want those contributions to go to the community. And then that means we need to find a way where even if Darwin wants to have their own library with their own, and I think that Peter has been talked in ECPI about the thinking of how that artifact looks like and how their library and what technology they're building or is supporting the library, which may be completely different than what we're working in OHDSI, but at least we need those two libraries to at least share content or have an automated way where we can take the cohort or the content and be available for the community, because we're all contributing to the same science, similar to what we do in vocabulary. And just the way we say when you do ETL and you learn something from vocabulary, share it back to the community. I think the same should happen with phenotypes. And that's the other thing that we need to align on is our artifacts and our products of phenotypes.
All right, so I think we're on time here. I think the main action item that we need to take on is to make sure that Darwin representatives are on the next call. So Christian, you have been in direct contact with Albert, Anika, Ashia. Do you think we could set up a follow-up call where we ensure that they are present?
You wanted to talk before or only at the symposium? Which one?
I think we should talk before, because I think we can set up a plan at least, or maybe even begin working towards the plan. I understand that the symposium would be an ideal scenario, but we could create like a tangible plan. Like if there's a 50 developed definitions in Darwin, we could create like a rough, crude straw man plan, or a commitment at least in principle, to get those 50 definitions to the OHDSI Phenotype Library, and say these are the stakeholders, these are the timelines, this is the folks that we're going to work on it. If we do that, then we have justification to work together in the same room in the OHDSI meeting.
I also, Krishna, just to add to that, maybe I have access to the things that were submitted to the library, to the symposium, and that's the process of Darwin, and that's Asia's abstract, and then whatever we have in the working group, I can create a slide deck to basically summarize what Christian said of what the things we currently have in the community going on as an input, and say kind of use it as a way to know what we're going to discuss when we meet in the symposium, and just agree on the agenda of that meeting, and maybe have a one call where we look at these things together and say, this is what we have, and this is where we want to reach. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, we can. Vulnerability is that they have timelines, okay, and timelines and very limited resources. So to go in and go on a full-fledged deposition of 50 phenotypes will be a stressor, just so you know.
And one of the commitments we can do is to make the barrier of entry as low as possible. Like it could just be so easy.
Yeah.
Their protocols are in the public domain. Their code in the public domain. Those cohorts already exist in the public domain. Should be in principle.
The way they work with public domain is that they first do it all in secrecy, and then they put it out into the public domain once it's all done. That appears to me the MO that's being established. I don't like it, but I think that's what we're looking at. But it's a conversation we should have. We should say, hey, what's actually going on? Why don't we see them? Where's the GitHub, or where is it? Right? And so that's another conversation. When can the stuff actually show up? Well, and what is it that can show up? And can the core diagnostics from various databases be shown, and that kind of thing, right? So I wouldn't make assumptions. I would ask them.
Sorry, do you mean the protocols of the studies? Because is this the protocols of the studies are available in the NCEP website?
Yeah, but how long does it take to make it available, right? So
Yeah. So some of them recently they are sent, all of them in which we are participating, and by the way, I think it's maybe more than 50. The idea is to arrive to 60 studies at least, so maybe 60 or more than 60 studies, or so maybe the number is higher than 50. So
you may
in 5 years, the truth is, in 5 years, we are in the second year, and currently, if I'm wrong, we are participating in 8 studies, but I think currently around 12 studies were developed. So the idea, obviously, in the coming years is to arrive 60 studies per year. So that means maybe there will be within the next years more than 50 phenotypes. Although it's true that some of the studies maybe can be a repetition of the previous ones, because with the idea to update the data. So, but obviously it's not prefixed just now. We will see within the next years.
Yeah, here you go. So yeah, so because I don't think anybody knows. I don't know, but I don't know when, what, if there is a study, when what artifact goes online. It's not clear to me, and whose job it is to put it out there.
Yeah.
I don't know that. But what I'm trying to tell people here is, don't expect that everything is going to be as it's appearing, as it's being worked on, to be already visible. It may well be that there's stuff which is going to go behind closed doors, and only at the end it's going to be published. I don't know that. So we just need to be conscientious of that. This may not be what your assumption is. Okay, that's all. Nothing wrong, nothing right. I'm not defending the approaches. I don't think that Darwin people have that much choice here, really. So yes, so that's where this is. Okay.
Right. So I propose the next steps being to reach out to the team members from Darwin to ensure that we have a follow-up conversation. In that follow-up conversation, we try to arrive at an agreement as to this is what our future state we want to get to in this time frame. And then we try to, if we get to that agreement, then we protect some time in the symposium to talk about it and try to make progress on it. And Christian, would you like to take the action item of communicating with these individuals and helping us?
Sure, absolutely. Very happy to do that.
And I think it's important to say, given those work that has been done, at least I have visibility to what Asia did, the group did with Asia leading it, and what Danny did with not Danny, but the students of Danny did. We don't have to say it, but all of them are a great contribution. We just need to put things together so the inside community benefit from what person does in one place. That's like it. Nothing gets conflicting with anything. It's all really trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I think the two issues we have to deal with, Aza, is that, and you may say that, but they may not feel that way, so that needs to come to the same page. And then of course the other one is workload. We have to be somewhat cognizant of them actually having to be able to do that, and they're already underwater. It's not like, this is not something which. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we are over time as always. Apologies again, but I'm gonna stop the recording and then thank everybody for joining to this meeting, and progress on the idea of integrating Darwin contributions to the OHDSI Phenotype Library. And I'll also say, Andrew, we're looking forward to working with N3C in the upcoming meeting, which will be similar. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.